a 2 day hiatus from doing the program. We're doing the program on Monday. We're here on Wednesday at the regular time, but not the same day. We had a lot of glitches, not here at the studio, but had a lot of glitches in terms of things that were happening. I was a victim of Murphy's Law this past Monday. If everything can go wrong, if anything can go wrong, and that was a case of everything going wrong, I was just having just this one of those. It's just one of those days. But we're here now, and
That was only second time in so many years you've been doing this podcast that you had to cancel. That
yeah,
was
that's
the,
true,
it was the only time.
and that's one. Yeah, because I don't like to have an obligation and then I can't meet my obligation. This is an obligation I have on Mondays at 2 o'clock, and we're gonna have to do some taping ahead of time because I'll be leaving the country in May, and I'll be gone for that whole month. So we have to do some things before we leave, and we'll try to do that between now and I think we'll be leaving on the 1st of May, which is on a Thursday. So we'll have to tape about 3 programs, so we'll have something to air at the regular time. But we're here now, and we're glad you're here. And those of you who will be tuning us in later, you will find that we're putting the finishing touches on what happened in Dallas. Everybody's talking about it. And you can't turn the TV set on now without them talking about the latest release of these documents. And really, the only person that I listen to now about that is Morley, Jefferson Morley, who is the premier expert, I think, on the documents. I don't think his analysis of what happened in Dallas is any clearer than what I'll be saying here today. But I have to give him a lot of credit. He's going through the documents as they come out, and he's aware of some of the unredacted documents. But I'm going to put some things together here today that will transport over his. I'm going to leapfrog and do some things with my analysis that will be placing it into a context based on my research. I brought a book to the studio that I want to start out with. I brought a book to the studio about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This book is by Jesse Ventura. You might remember him from doing the conspiratorial programs on one of the networks. And Jesse Ventura wrote this book. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's called, the book is titled, They Killed Our President, 63 Reasons to Believe There Was a Conspiracy to Assassinate JFK. And I have to also, I might get around to talking about this book. This is by Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter, one of my favorite writers, and I give her a lot of credit because she is one of those out of the box thinkers, and I love those out of the box thinkers who are not transfixed on a certain view, and they are told in somebody else's water. She's out of the box thinker, and she thinks for herself, and I give her a lot of credit for that. I wonder what would happen if they're talking about putting a program together with Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly. Boy, wouldn't that be something if it was a triumvirate group of Ann Coulter, Megyn Kelly, and Candace Owens? Wouldn't that be a group that could compete at the same time as The View, which I think is on that program is on its way out. I heard they're not going to renew Whoopi Goldberg's contract, and Joy Behar, she's gone too at the end of the contract, and there'll be some relief for the viewers who will have something else to do during that time period because they're not that program is over. And that would be something I would like to see that program. Candace Owens, Ann Coulter, and Megyn Kelly. That would be quite a lineup. And you don't need 5. I wonder how they would do on a time period opposite the 5 on Fox. That would be the program, by the way, that succeeded the program that started at 5 o'clock that was done by Glenn Beck. And it was that time period was never hot before. I mean, who's watching serious television at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Glenn Beck made that a very popular hour, and now that hour is no longer just like a dull hour. You got to put some folks up to compete against Fox. That's a very popular program they have, and that's going to be hard to that program's hard to top. I think that may well be at this point for Fox. That may be the top program that Fox has, and I think that is bigger than Sean Handa's program. And let's see that Laura Trump is doing real well on Saturdays. Who comes on? She comes on after Mark Levine's program, which comes on 8 o'clock. I'm pretty much on the news. I'm unless you are showing me you are broadcasting something to do with the end result of a season, and I can learn who the champion is going to be by watching a single game or something. Then you're not going to get me to sit there for a whole season watching boxing or watching basketball. That goes on forever, and then baseball that goes on forever, and football. You're not going to be able to get me to do that. I don't have that much time. But if it's like a championship game, like the games they had Saturday and Monday, and then it can be as exciting as it was when they had the Final Four on Saturday, and then they had the elimination in the final two teams, Florida and Houston. I'll watch that. That's rare. I'll watch that, but basically my time, limited as it is, I have to I have to tape it so I can save time. I can't. I don't even have. I don't even have an hour and a half that I can spare to do my program. Um, I have to study for my program, and that takes a lot of time. And this hour and a half that I would the basketball game really don't last about an hour and a half. The rest of that is the 2.5 hours of commercials. Excuse me. And so I can't sit there and then go through commercials and then the game and then they got the 30 minutes and got the commercials on there and the advertising got to come on to pay for the programming and all of that. And I can't sit there. I'm just so busy. So I watch the big games, but I have to make sure that I tape it and come back to it so I can get to where they're on the court playing. When they take a time out, I bypass that and go to the next part when they're back on the floor again. But I have to do little things like that to save time. I can't believe it. When I was working full time, I would ask people who were retired how they like retirement. They said to retirement, I'm busier now than I was when I was working full time. I'm scratching my head, saying to myself, "How are you busier retired than you were working full time when you had a 9 to 5 job every day, 5 days a week, and you're stationed there. You have to be there, and that's just out of your control. So how are you busier when you're more in control of your schedule when you're retired than when you're working full time? Because that 9 to 5, that's you got to do your 8. Well, I retired in 2005, and I can tell you I understand it now a lot better than I did then. Because I've been busy, and I am busier now than I was when I was working full time. Because you work really your work day is not 9 to 5. Your work day is from the time you get up in the morning. I get up this morning at 3:30, and my day started at 3:30, and I'm doing different things. Some of which is preparing for this program here, and then some of it is the things around the house. The dogs got to be fed, and I got to cook for my dogs and all of that. And just one thing after another, and you finally you just fill your day up with activities that are not planned. You don't have like a 9 to 5 type of planning of your day, but it amounts to the fact that 9 to 5 is just the beginning of it. The rest of it is all the things that you didn't plan and the unintended consequences of your day. Well, I'm here, and so I'm not complaining. I'm only griping. Is griping and complaining the same thing? I think I'm just what I'm doing here is I'm griping. So I'm not complaining. I'm just griping. The difference. I brought Ann Coulter's book along with Jessica Ventura's book, and I hope to be able to get around to this book as well. I have a lot of respect for Ann Coulter. Every book she writes is a bestseller. I think she's had like 13 of them. I think I have a whole row of her books on one shelf by themselves. I'm going to fill that shelf up with Ann Coulter's work. This book right here, this book came out in 2003, and it's titled Treason. And then the subheading, you put 2 dots there, and then the subheading, Liberal Treachery from the Cold War to the War on Terrorism. And this book is Ann Coulter at her best. I'm taking this book with me when I go to out of the country, and I'm going to. I didn't underscore this book. I went right through it, but there's so many points I wanted to underscore when I was reading it. But I was doing speed reading. I had to read it over again. This time I'm going to underscore the main points, as I do most of the books that I read, because I have to use it after I read it. I have to use it for reference. This book right here is not a scholarly written book. I wouldn't call Jesse Ventura a scholar, but his targeting of this issue of the assassination of the president, they killed our president, he calls it, 63 reasons to believe there was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. I wrote about this, let's see, and was this yesterday's post or was that today's post on Facebook? I write on Facebook every day. And I think this was yesterday's post where I gave a 64th reason to believe there was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. And I went back and I tied it into M. Evans Stanford's book, who wrote the book called, you probably remember Joseph McCarthy. And Stanton's book is called Blacklisted in History. And he's talking about how McCarthy has been blacked out in history and so on and so forth. And when I'm writing, when I'm dealing with the Kennedy assassination, what I'm saying in my post, and as I go back and interpret what I think occurred in Dallas, I think I know what happened in Dallas. I think I have figured out every angle of what occurred in that event, and I think it's above what they're saying. These other experts are saying, because I put some things together they have not yet come to, but I think they have to come by here in order to put other spins on what occurred. But I think that I really think in order to understand the assassination of John F. Kennedy, you have to go back into the McCarthy period, and it may seem like it's not tied together, but I tied it together in my posts, and they would go unchallenged, like most of what I'm writing will go unchallenged, because I'm not just throwing stuff out here in the public just to be out here in the public. I'm doing some serious work and also some analyzing what it is that others are saying and what they're coming up with, and trying to integrate all these different pieces of a very complex puzzle. But I think after you get really into looking at every angle of what people are saying and bringing all that in, and have all these documents in your desk and you're sorting through it and all the rest of it, you can kind of piece together after a while. And I've been at this for a while. You can piece together just about every angle of what occurred there.
I'm gonna interject here. Okay. Um, just dawned on me today. It's like we had a president get assassinated, and some people just want us to believe it was a lone gunman kind of situation.
Mhm.
But if you look at historical things, assassinations of prime ministers, presidents, kings, when the hell there wasn't a conspiracy behind it? So why would that? Why would this be this standalone event that we're expected to believe that's happened? There's got to be. I would say there always had to be a conspiracy. I mean, even if it might have been after fact to try to cover up their incompetence, there was still a conspiracy involved.
Yes, John, you're making the point. You know, the dedication of this book by Jesse Ventura. Let me read this to you here about who he dedicated the book to. And if you've been reading these documents and these books, you know why he would do this. This book is dedicated to truth, justice, and the American way. And then it says also, think about these three figures here: Gerald Posner, Vincent Bugliosi, and Bill O'Reilly. And then he puts in parentheses there, they need to read this. And if you know anything about these three writers, and they've all written about um, Kennedy's assassination, they need to read this book, particularly when you have them saying the things they said in their work. Jared Posner, I don't have no respect for Jared Posner. Jared Posner's book is called Case Closed. If I see him in an alley and I can get him to put him up, we're gonna have to duke it out, because no person that can have a studied view of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, they can write the book that Posner wrote called Case Closed. And with all the evidence that's come out since that time period, this man is still standing on Oswald did it, he did it alone, he didn't have any help, there was no conspiracy, et cetera, et cetera. This is a comic book. So I know why just Ventura said he hopes that in dedicating this book to these three persons, and he mentioned Jerry Posner at the very top of that list of three writers, researchers supposedly on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I know why he put Posner first, because there's no way in the world you can contend that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. You know, when I hear somebody say that, that's the first thing I want to know about their conclusion. What is their position on Oswald? That would tell me a lot right there. Just what is the conclusion they've drawn about Oswald's role in the assassination of John F. Kennedy? That tells me everything. That tells me everything really I need to know about whether I'm interested in exploring further what they have to say. Because I have to tell you this, and I will not be contradicted in this by any of these scholars that are doing their research. Oswald didn't shoot anybody. Not on the 22nd of November. He didn't shoot Kennedy, and he did not shoot J. P. Tippit. Thank you, John. I definitely need that today. There's no way in the world Oswald shot John F. Kennedy. I know where the shooters were in Dealey Plaza, and I know how they set it up now. After having looked at a number of things, including the Zapruder film, the Nixon film, and some of the other films that were out there, some of the photographic evidence, the badge man that was there in Dealey Plaza. I'll tell you who else was there. Jack Ruby was there. Um, one of the Watergate burglars later on, the one that would have been caught inside the Watergate building that brought Nixon down in 1974. Trying to call his name up, but he was there. John had mentioned some time ago about the I think they had four presidents or former presidents who were in Dallas that day, including Richard Nixon. I'm not saying they were tied into what occurred there, but there definitely was an atmosphere where the word was out something big is going to happen. Now, what was going to happen, they would not have known all the particulars, but the word was out that there was something brewing, and rumors were circulating. And after it occurred, then they could put together a number of things here. Here's what I'm contending. Here's what I've concluded, I should say. And I wrote about this. I made 10 major points in my writing about it. I think yesterday is when I wrote this piece. Conclusion number one, Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot Kennedy, did not shoot at Kennedy, did not kill, and therefore did not kill Kennedy, and that he was what he said he was when they caught him at a theater that he had gone to, and there's no way in the world you can connect Oswald up to what happened in Dealey Plaza by being in that theater. That's point number one, you researchers. Because nobody saw Oswald in that window. And even if they saw him in that window, they can't tell how tall he is, what size he was, what weight he was, or any of the rest of it. They gave them a description of who they were looking for. The reason for that is you cannot do that when you're looking at a person that's in a window. You know, if he's crouched down, you can't tell the height of the person and so on and so forth. And what that tells me, among a number of other things, is that they had their man before they caught Oswald in that theater. They were on Oswald's trail immediately. And what is really a galvanizing point to be made is they were looking for him before anyone could possibly have a description of who the shooter was. Let me tell you researchers something. There were two teams of shooters in Dealey Plaza. I didn't say two shooters, two teams of shooters. And the teams were not working together or even knew each other. Well, I mean, you know, you see, here's what happens in these kind of events. Everybody has a need to know, understanding of what is going to happen. They know their assignment. They know very little else. But there are two teams, and each team has a shooter that will be in the back of the motorcade and in the front of the motorcade. There's one team that's on the 6th floor of the school book depository. There are two rifles up there. One is a 6.5 Italian Kakana rifle called a weapon of love by the Italians because they would swear before cheese and crackers that that's what lost the war for them in Italy during World War II. Because if anything you aim at, chances of you hitting it probably close to zero. It's a weapon hard to sight, hard to aim at the target and have it hitting the thing. It was called a weapon of love uh, in World War II because you couldn't kill anybody with it. That's one of the weapons. 6.5 Italian Kakano. But there's a second weapon up there. This is the weapon that was used to actually do the shooting up from the sixth floor. And that's a 7.65 German Mauser. Now you can ask yourself this question, and I'm asking it to these researchers, what is that 6.5 Italian Kakano, which was a mail order weapon that was ordered by a person named Heidel, another AKA name for Lee Harvey Oswald. What is that gun being up there on the sixth floor, the one that they would now claim as a weapon, as the other one fell out of public discourse? People don't know there were two guns, two rifles. What was the other? What is a Tangakano up there for? Which would not have been used for shooting because you couldn't do anything with it anyway. It might be a turnaround shot and shoot at the person firing the weapon. I'm exaggerating that, but I'm saying that it's not an accurate weapon. You're not going to use that weapon. It cost $12.95 at that time, so you're not going to be using that weapon to do any. If you were planning this assassination, and this assassination is planned because these person had a listen to this point very carefully. The person that is shooting at the president, these persons have a vendetta. This was a blood debt being paid. So why is that 6.5 a Technicana rifle on that sixth floor? Here's why. The morning of the 22nd of November, Lee Harvey Oswald who gets a ride to work. There are some that say Oswald couldn't drive. Oswald could drive, but Oswald doesn't have a car. He's getting a ride, and that morning he has a bag, and the driver that picked him up asked him, this is his testimony before the Warren Commission, asked him what was in the bag he was carrying. Lee Harvey Oswald said it was curtain rods. Well, you carrying curtain rods to work. You hang curtains in the school book depository building. He's carrying that rifle, and he's carrying that rifle because his controller has told him, because Oswald doesn't know he's being guided into being the patsy. They're setting him up. He doesn't know they're setting him up. He carries that rifle at the behest of his controller. And his controller was David Adley Phillips. And David Adley Phillips is the CIA director of Latin American affairs. You can go and check that out every day of the weekend. You'll find that out. I'm not telling you no conjectural claims about that. David Adley Phillips was Oswald's CIA controller. and that's why that rifle is being carried up there. He doesn't know why he's been told to bring that weapon, but that weapon's what they found on that sixth floor because Oswald is walking into a trap. It's not any different, quite frankly, than it was when they used the same kind of entrapment. And people are now saying this, but I said it a lot earlier than they are saying it. But I said this in terms of looking at Watergate, because the Watergate was because Watergate occurred because the CIA overthrew Richard Nixon. You can take what I'm saying to the bank. And there are many books out about it now, the best of which I think is a book written by Russ Baker. But James Reston's book is very good, formerly of, I think he's working now with Newsmax, but he was once with Fox. His book is very good, and also, but Russ Baker's book probably is the best and most comprehensive. In 2 chapters of his book, one of which is called "The Setup." Read that. If you can't read the whole book, it's worth reading. Now you can read the whole. I was, if you want, if people like to hone in, give me the information because I have a lot of things to do in my day and so on and so forth. I understand how busy people are. So if you want to just cut to the chase, read the 2 chapters on Watergate. That's how they set it up. That's how they ran a coup on Richard Nixon. And the coup of Nixon was also well plotted and had a lot of persons in on the setup because they could not have forced Nixon out of power unless they had it set up so that the way they set him up was to make sure it was too hot for them to come to his rescue. Because it's very hard. The framers made it very hard to remove a president because you're talking about the whole people voting for the president of the United States. The framers understood the gravity of that. The single office holder, that everybody in the country who can vote will vote for that office holder, but none of the others are like that. And you're going to be able to just take him out for light and transient reasons. The framers didn't think so. And that's why they said that it's the impeach. That's why it says in Article 2, Section 4, the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States and all civil office holders shall be removed from office upon impeachment for a conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. On the accusation of it that you impeach it on, a majority vote. But the ante goes up in the Senate when the trial is occurring, and that would take a 2/3 vote. And that's very difficult to do because your own party members have to then buy into the removal. And they made sure that Nixon would, in fact, fail that test because what they did in the Washington Post is they put on the front page every day and dirtied it up so nobody dared come to Richard Nixon's rescue when they've been impeaching him, because if they came to rescue him, then they're seemingly part of the cover-up, which was Nixon's problem, by the way, the cover-up, not the burglary. The burglary was CIA. Nixon was entrapped into it by covering up because of the political aspects of it. Can you imagine what would have occurred? Although I don't think he would have had a problem with his opposition being George McGovern. He carried every state except Massachusetts, but he panicked because these persons that were in that Watergate building were part of CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President of the United States. And Nixon panicked, thinking if the word got out, it would hurt his re-election chances. And he got trapped into it at that point of the. If he stayed away from it, but no, they roped him into it because they got caught inside the Watergate building in Washington, D.C. And being caught inside that building was by design, and I will name the person here. because the CIA was inside of Nixon administration. That's as true as it can get. And the person who set up the other four, there are 5 burglars here. And the one that set the other 4 up in there was a person by the name of James McCord. He deliberately, they're writing about it now, but I said this a long time before they wrote about it. They're saying it now. They're looking at this man's actions. It makes no sense. These are professional burglars that all of a sudden became what's Bunham and Bailey. The gang that couldn't shoot straight. You know, Lauren Hardy type people who became totally inept all of a sudden and made all kinds of mistakes, had all kinds of trails leading to that room where they were hiding in that room. One of which was, in fact, the taping. Who put the tape on that door? You tape that door, in that case, you tape the door up and down. Who taped that door? Well, the tape is around the door, so when you walk down, you can see the tape on the door as you're walking down the hall, which is a guy named Willis, who's the security guard that day, who walked down the hall, saw the tape on the door initially, took the tape off and kept going, thinking nothing of it. Maybe somebody did it during the course of the day. After 5 o'clock, they forgot to take it off because you don't want the latch necessarily making the noise. So you go in and out a number of times, go get coffee, go get donuts and things like that. But when he came back down the hallway, he had taken the tape off the door, thinking somebody had inadvertently left it on there, took it off the door, and somebody put it back on there. That's James McCord that did that. Yeah, he's trying to get the person inside the Watergate building caught. And when Willis came back down that hallway and saw that tape back on that door, he knew someone was in that room. And that's when he pulled his gun out and went in there and found him in there crouched down. And all 5 of the burglars were caught. And they had the credentials on them saying they were part of the Creek team. That's how they got Nixon. It was a CIA operation. I'm as right here as rain. The CIA tried to kill Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's how they operate. You can say what you want to about this person, but let me ask you this: how many months has that been since that incident in Butler, Pennsylvania occurred, and what do you know about this person? Have you seen his parents on TV talking about it? Has anybody interviewed any of them? Have they been brought before the public just to answer some questions? There's a lot of questions here. You don't know anything about them now, any more about them now than you knew then. They've been X'd out of the public limelight. And somebody ought to ask the question, why would that be? This is the president. This is a person running for the presidency of the United States. He's been president once already. They've impeached him twice. There have been all kinds of threats on his life. And there were 2 attempts with guns involved in proximity to where he was. The man in Butler, Donald Trump, was shot, a headshot, that if he had not turned, that man does not leave Butler, Pennsylvania. And a 24-year-old person that's barely got his feet wet in the political arena is that angry with a candidate running for the presidency, even if he had been president before. What stakes do you have at 24 years of age in the voting process, and you're so offended by what is happening that you have such a stake in it and so much to lose if he wins the election a second time? what are your stakes in it at that point in your life, and what drives you to be there as an assassin? Just think about who you know and what you were doing at 24 years of age, and how invested were you in that. But I'm coming back to my point here that I'm trying to make about this event, because you see these patterns. But when you begin to investigate these kinds of incident, you don't look for a smoking gun, because you're not going to find it. They're looking. That's what they're doing. They're looking for a smoking gun. You don't look for a smoking gun. You're looking for patterns. The pattern that is used, and the pattern that is used is, and this was in more than just one place. There were different places where the hits of Kennedy would have occurred, and each one of those cities where this assassination could have occurred, Dallas being one of them, but there were others too. Chicago, which is taken off the line of a place for it to occur because it was too close to uh, Charles, Charles Nicoletti and that crime family in Chicago, who had sworn the election for John F. Kennedy in 1960. You know, his father. You know, his father, Joseph Kennedy, had ties that go way back to the mafia, the mob, because uh, Joseph Kennedy made his money through bootlegging operations, and that's nothing but the mafia with a piece of it. And he turned to them to help his son come across the finish line in an election where he was not supposed to win and would not have won, with Nixon coming in as the vice president and then running for president after Eisenhower served 8 years. And there was no reason to believe that this upstart, uh, John Kennedy, could have defeated Richard Nixon, a seasoned politician. And that was not in the cards for him to do that. But then there was this finessing that occurred. And Joseph Kennedy made a pact with the devil, and that the non-binding agreement, but certainly the expectation was you scratch the back of the candidate, and you do in this case what they had done in Chicago, because one of the things in Chicago is the mob owned every politician in Chicago, including Mayor Daley. And so Joseph Kennedy enlisted the mob, Sam Giancana, Charles Nicoletti, Johnny Rosselli, and some of the others. And the idea was quid pro quo, that if they were to help his son get the presidency, the mob that now was being cited and had a stake in this election, because what had happened in '59, the year before the presidential election, Castro had come out of those mountains and took over Cuba. And there are two interests that's involved here. One interest was that Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of Florida, and the Monroe Doctrine that goes back to 1823 is still in place, and that is the Western Hemisphere is a sphere of influence and sphere of power of the United States. That's their base, and don't come in here. But Russia's in here through Cuba, because Fidel Castro came out of those mountains and overthrew the Allied government in Cuba under Batista, Fulgencio Batista, and ran him out, and now Castro's in there, and Castro's tied into Russia. That happened in '59. So the politics making strange bedfellows is that now you have two persons that are drawn together not because they love each other. Sometimes you're not in bed with people because you love them. How many times that happened in these people like this Eric Swalwell, this Eric Swalwell guy who was sleeping with this Chinese spy, or she's sleeping with him, or he's sleeping with her, whichever you want to make the connection of which one was the dominant person making the connection. Both of them have something to gain out of it. But he's on that intelligence committee, and so I know that what the Chinese are doing, they're trying to make sure they have somebody that's inside of the power center. There's no love there. This is business. And so you look at 1959, and what you have here is that you have the Kennedy coming in, running for president, the underdog, and they're now enlisting some help by the underworld because if he wins Illinois, that puts him one step closer to the White House. There's some other things that have to fall in place too, and those things can be put in place by some other things and other factors are taking place for the reason with other players involved. But Illinois is very important, and they are using one of the crime families to bring that about. And the idea was if that can be pulled off, then they back off of the mafia because the mafia is helping and own the White House as they own these politicians and these other citizens, so on and so forth. Because in order to run crime, you got to be paying off. You got to be putting some money in people that can hurt you and shut you down. You got to put some money in their hands. You're making money in your operation. They're not going to allow that unless they're in on the game. That's just the way it works. And so, lo and behold, the election breaks in Kennedy's favor. I think he won the election by less than 100,000 votes. And now that that has occurred, the idea was you got a friend in the White House, and your interests would now be protected by the President of the United States, and that was what the expectation was. Now, in the background, Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy family, the son of Prescott, I think it's Prescott. I think it's Prescott Kennedy, but then there's another patriarch involved, and then Joseph Kennedy. I think it's Prescott Kennedy and Joseph Kennedy, and they're supposed to this is a quid pro quo type of arrangement, and there's a payoff to be given to the fact that they helped the president, now the president elect, to win, and the payoff is call the dogs off. But Joseph Kennedy wants not only his son to be president, he wants his son has told John F. Kennedy that his brother is going to be the attorney general. And Bobby Kennedy, RFK Sr., and now his son, who is now with the Trump administration over HHS in the Trump administration. I know what that's about. And so do the people that's watching everything that's going on, because what that's about is that they're planning to fight these people. That's very clear. And what you're saying is they're fighting back. That's that's who is really behind all this burning and so on and so forth. Maybe you think that people are so upset about people driving Teslas and stuff like that. Are you bothered by that? Do you care what kind of car people are driving? Is that your concern? You're trying to pay your car note. All this energy you see going on, soul messages being sent out, and so on and so forth, and those messages are back off. Because you didn't have a Doge before you had this election coming up, and Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency, and what they do not want is a government is acting efficiently, because it is acting efficiently, it cuts off the money streams that's going into these different places where people are being fed taxpayers' money. And Elon Musk, who you remember bought Twitter, which had 14,000 employers, and the man pulled it down to 200, and it did not miss a beat in terms of the efficiency of Twitter. It became more efficient. With 1/7 the manpower, it became more efficient and cut off 6/7 of the manpower of Twitter project, made it more efficient. And Donald Trump brought him in there from the Democratic Party, by the way. He was a hit over the Democratic Party, and everybody was buying a Tesla because that was the noise being made over there is that we want to go electric. And here was the best car that's being made in electric car being made. I mean, that's a good. I don't have a. I don't. I would. I would buy the car myself if I was in the car business, because I understand the engineering in back of it. Because this man made that's a car that was made for the ages. And Elon Musk was very popular with the left when he's over there. And then the car you put out there, yes, they're now king when they all hear king the cars. The Democrats are keying each other's cars. But that's who bought the cars. The idea was they're buying the cars because they're moving. The idea of the Democrats was global warming, and we have to do something about it, and we want to get up. We have to get off fossil fuels and all. That's what they were doing. That's what they were pushing. So it's really interesting to see they're keying when they're keying these cars and scratching them up with these keys and that. That's Democrats scratching each other's cars up. And in terms of Elon Musk, Musk only owns 12% of that company. The man is worth $400 billion. He got his hands in rocketry more than he has his hands in the Tesla automobile industry. That's one of the things. This man is in multiple places. The man just did what NASA could not do. Think about that for a minute. 235 miles above the Earth, they're supposed to have a satellite station, and they couldn't bring him back 235 miles above the Earth, but 10 times that distance, they brought him back from the moon, and that's 235,000 or 240,000 miles away, and it was to bring astronauts back 6 times, take them to the moon, and bring them back from the moon 6 times and worked to perfection the first time they did it. Maybe you believe in Little Red Riding Hood and Snow White and the umpteen dwarfs and so on and so forth. But I finished that in third grade. You can run a lot of things by a lot of people, but you cannot run this by me. And I'm telling you this. I'm telling you what Bill Casey said back in 1970, the book that he wrote called "We Never Went to the Moon," and that's a fact. Couldn't do it then and can't do it now. And Candace Owens, by the way, said last week, and I was glad to see her say this. The woman's very powerfully. She's a powerful person. She has much more. She has an audience bigger, much bigger than the platform that I have. She's not more knowledgeable than I am, but she has a tremendous platform, and she's using it properly to serve the public. She's a great servant of the public. So is Megan Kelly, by the way. And Ann Coulter is a Cadillac. Now that she's back over here doing what she does best, and that's protecting the national interest and so on. She had gone off the road a little bit, disappointed in Trump and then got a little crazy with the disappointment. But she's still doing a great service for the country. These are patriots. Ultimately, you see the patriotism coming forward because they are deeply invested in making America great again, whether they join MAGA or not. Candace Owens said the other day that she has zero faith in anybody landing on the moon. I tell you this: the chance of that happening is zero. Didn't happen. That did not happen. Couldn't do it then and can't do it now. You cannot get through the Van Allen belts. Those radiation belts are 25,000 miles. You can't take a guidance you can't the guidance gadgets couldn't go through there without being distorted. And to go through that radiation belt, there's no. I mean, look at what they when you go into the dentist's office next time, and they're going to X-ray your one side of your face. Have you noticed those guys get out of that room? But when they leave you in that room, they put that lead shield over your body, like they put a anchor on your chest. That's a lead shield because without that X-ray will at that intensity will harm you. So if you notice, I would put a shield between you and that X-ray as they're taking the one side of your mouth, or the front of your mouth, or the other side of your mouth. They're making sure that radiation does not get to your body because that's deadly radiation. And they only do it, and that thing, and that it's over just that quickly. Can you imagine that they hit that thing? Go when you go in that dentist office next time. Notice how that thing takes a picture very quickly and it's over. And you're gonna go to 25,000 miles of radiation in that gadget that they say landed on the moon. And they told the person later on, because they don't have no respect for your intelligence, they took a car up there and were driving a car on the moon. I'm about ready to hurt somebody. You tell me, you up there on the moon driving a car. Was that a Tesla up there or what? Before that, they were up there playing golf on the moon. There's a person, by the way, you may not be aware of this, but there's a person who claimed to have taking people to the spot in Nevada where they use it as a landing, as a site of the moon landing. They haven't heard from him since. He claims that he knows exactly where they did the filming. And have you seen this astronaut Aldrich, where he's been talking about it in a very circuitous way and admitting in comments he's made that it never occurred? You can take this to the bank. It never happened. I'm saying that openly and out in public. And I'm a public commentator, and I have to be, and I cannot say things like that unless I have it nailed down that it did not happen, and it did not happen. I'm telling you, it didn't happen. And I knew that back in as early as 1970, and have been watching that from that point up to this time period. And I'm telling you that and we have to do this next week, John, and that this thing is much bigger than you think it is, folks. And I'm gonna be going into this for the rest of this month to begin to unravel this onion, so you can see what really occurred in this incident here as it relates to Kennedy, because this assassination of a president and overthrowing of another president and the toppling of administrations is still happening as we speak. And we need to understand the setup. And I'm going to try to lay that out methodically in the next, let's see here, we got 3 more sessions in April. So we'll try to lay out a piece of it each week and finally get to the culmination of it in 3 weeks. Okay, I got to get out of here. I'm running over time, got a little sidetracked here. But there is a problem we got to fix in this country if we're going to go forward, because we're now the country's in distress. Okay, let me get out of here and I'll pick it up from this point next week. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.